All right, hello, welcome. Thanks for joining us today. We are here for how to plan for a successful webinar upgrade. Our presenters today are Mark Jamieson, who is our president and CEO, Alan Winegar, who is our COO, and Lisa Dutcher, who is our program director. I'm Sue Brzee. I'm the marketing director here at 2W Technologies, and we'll be moderating today. For those of you who are not familiar with us, 2W Tech is a technology solutions provider. We specialize in solutions for the manufacturing and distribution industries. We have a large line card. So to check out everything we do, go to 2wtech.com. We are here to talk about Epicor today. So we'll talk about what we do for Epicor. We are their largest global partner. We're an ISV for them. We're a partner elite as well. We've been doing Epicor solutions for over 30 years now.
Hey, thanks, Sue. Yeah, thanks for joining us today, everybody. Today, what we're going to do is we're going to talk about upgrades, and this is a pretty current topic. 2025.1 is going to be released in May, and even though whether you're on-prem, whether you're in the cloud, whether you're in the Epicor cloud, you still have to prep for your upgrades. And so this is what we're going to cover today. Why you want to do it. We're going to talk about the different upgrade scenarios because there is a little bit of difference depending upon what your current situation is. Some testing strategies and some go live activities. And it's a process, and the more you do, the better it'll get. But you really need to have a plan. So why would you want to upgrade if you don't have to? Now, if you're on SaaS, you're going to get the upgrade ready or not. And there's some nuances around that. But if you're running another version and you can control your upgrade cadence, why would you want to do that? So Alan, what's the difference between active support, sustaining support? What's that all about?
Yeah, well, I mean, active support is, a current version, right? And right now it's version 2023.1 and above, right? So you get full support for it, bug fixes, new features that come out, things like that. Sustaining support is for older versions, and it can be somewhat limited, right? You get limited phone support, access to the online database or knowledge base. You do have access to the latest releases, but the difference is you don't get really any bug fixes. If you have a problem and you call Epicor or you submit a ticket, they may give you some guidance on how to work around it if they can, validate that it's in the newer version. They will still provide security, or they may still provide security updates, right? So that you're addressing any critical security issues. But support can be limited, particularly as time goes on. The longer you're in sustaining support on an older version, right, the more limited that support is going to be from Epicor.
Yeah. So and if you're on an older version, I mean, there's security problems, there's functionality differences, and you're not taking advantage of the new stuff, right? So the upgrade, the new Kinetic UI, Lisa, that's a big to do. Everybody's talking about it.
That's correct. And a lot of clients will still be using the classic screens, and they're going to need to start considering migrating because those classic screens are going to be sunsetted on May 2026.
Yeah.
So it's time to transition to the new look and feel.
So we've got, I think we have a webinar out there on that. It's on our YouTube channel if you want to see some of that. We'll probably have some more functionality to that, or some more information on that as we walk down the path on how to do that. So let's get into the different scenarios here.
Yeah.
So go ahead, Al.
Yeah, there's really three types of scenarios here. One, right, you're already in the Epicor SaaS environment, and those upgrades just sort of happen all the time automatically, typically in the spring and a fall release. The second one is really if you're on-prem or in like an Azure cloud environment, right? That's more of an on-prem upgrade. So you're upgrading that current environment that you own, that you control, and getting to the latest version. And then there's the decision on, are you on-prem today And are you making a decision to go to SaaS so you can take advantage of all the automatic upgrades in the future? So, Lisa, do you want to walk us through kind of what it means in those different scenarios? There's a lot of common things, but there are some nuances to how you approach each one.
Exactly. So let's say you're Epicor SaaS. You're going to be upgraded twice a year. But that doesn't mean that you start thinking about your upgrade when that May 15th date come along. You may want to consider a couple weeks ahead or maybe a month ahead, thinking about developing that testing strategy. Get that test plan together. What do I want to test to make sure that everything that I have working today will be working once that new upgrade goes on? So you want to look at it before they start doing that, because they're going to update your pilot and you have a short number of days to make sure everything is vetted out. And then they're going to move you to the live environment. So it's nice to have that test plan developed so then you can just walk through it in that 30 days. Or earlier the better, because if you do find something that may not be working, maybe there's a custom report or something that you need to remediate, you want to have time to do that. So remediate those reports, document those fixes, because once they move that to the live environment, you will need to remediate that again once it gets to the live. So you want to make sure that you have adequate time to test. So that's
and
the
I
SaaS
think sometimes people think, well, I'm on SaaS and I'm going to get upgraded, so I don't have to prep for it. It'll just happen. But that's just not the case.
It's always good to plan and prep. Less surprises.
Yeah,
Now,
the
let's
last
say-
thing you want to do is surprise your end users with something new that pops up that you didn't know about, and then you're scrambling to figure it out, right? Again, you want to reduce as much confusion as possible.
The on-prem or the cloud version, you do have time to evaluate when is a good time, because sometimes people have busy seasons in their cycles and you want to make sure that you pick a good time that will work best for your company to do that upgrade. You want to develop your test plan and strategies. We'll talk a little bit more about doing that later on, but that testing, that's critical, because the more you test, the better you are prepared to go live. A lot of times when people go live and they get that surprise is because they realize they missed doing that test for that particular item. So once you do that, you may need to also consider upgrading integration items like QuickShip, DocStar, DocStar ECM. So if you are on an old version of QuickShip Manifest, you may say, hey, I'm upgrading my Epicor. I want to upgrade that as well. So you have time to plan those upgrades and get all of that done. And you want to get a test environment set up. So you leave your live running in production and you get a test environment, you move your live database into test, and then you begin the upgrade process and test that latest version going through your test plan. Now remember, you may have customizations. You may have special reports you created. You may need to remediate them. So make sure that while you're going through that centralized location of documenting those remediations is critical, so that you identify what you resolved in your test or pilot environment, and you can move that into your live environment. Now, some people just go through one round of testing. You may want to consider doing multiple rounds of testing. You do one round first, and you do a second round after you remediate your customizations. Then once you're ready, you execute your final go live pass, and don't forget to repeat the testing once the data has been moved to live. It's always good to make sure that you move to the customizations as well as the database and everything is upgrading and working successfully. So that's the on-prem cloud. Now, if you go to the third one, where you are on-prem and you're thinking about going to SaaS, you want to consider that, because you may not need to have the expense of a server. When you're evaluating your hosted environment in the on-prem, you may realize that server is many years old, maybe 7 years old, and you might need to purchase a new server. If you think about that, what's the cost of purchasing a new server versus purchasing the SaaS environment? You weigh out those odds and determine which one's best for you. And then when you decide that if you want to go to SaaS, you work with Epicor to have them help you provision that SaaS environment. You still want to develop that testing plan to make sure that everything that you have currently working today, that functionality, is the same functionality and working in the new environment. And then you also want to do some coordination of scheduling of the database from the on-prem database to the SaaS environment. That does take a little coordination, but it's not difficult at all. And then you want to execute the test plan, and you may want to do a second pass of copying the live database to the SaaS environment after you do any remediations that are needed. And so once you're ready and everything is functioning the way you're expecting, you go through your final go live pass and then revalidate again and just make sure everything is working successfully.
Yeah, so Epicor is encouraging almost all of their clients to move to some sort of a cloud, right? Custom cloud or the Epicor cloud, or just I think the key to that is if you're on-prem, if you're on a piece of hardware that's sitting in the closet, you should probably move your Epicor system off of that, and moving to the Epicor cloud is a perfectly great reason to do it. All right, so how do we start this whole thing?
Right. Well, where are you at? Where are you starting off from? What's your current state? You want to recognize what your current version is. Some people are on 2022, 2021, maybe you're on 2024, and you're just upgrading to the latest release. Some clients may be on older versions, 10, 9. And so you want to find out where are you at? And there's the version. If you look at the chart, you see the version number says 2021 and release 1, update 1. So this is a 12-month cycle. So that version number, when that top version changes from 2024 to 2025, it may contain schema changes. It may contain architectural changes. This is a bigger release. If it's just 2024.2, the release number changes from 1 to 2, then that's a limited release with some special functionalities, schema changes. And if you go 2024.2.5, that update number, that last digit, that updates with bug fixes. So you want to keep that update number as current as possible to take advantage of things that have been resolved. Mm-hmm. So determine where you're at. The second thing I would recommend doing is determining what unique business components, UBCs, that you have. These are the customizations, the dashboards, the reports, anything that you may have tweaked or adjusted. If you are in a version 2022.1 or higher, you can access the configuration upgrade dashboard in Epicor Kinetic and get a report of these. If you're lower than that, you may need to run the analyzer tool to get this list. Once you have this list, you'll be able to determine what needs to be upgraded. Do you also need to upgrade all of these, or are some of these features now in the latest release and you don't need to bring them forward? So it's best to double check whether these customizations are in the newest release, or do you still need to bring them forward? Then that
information is on Epic Web, right?
Yes, and to find out how to find your release.
Well, what the current release is.
Oh, what the current release is, yes.
Because the newest release is going to come out in May, which will be 2025.1, correct?
That is the next one that's coming out in May.
So right now it's 2024.2.
Something, right?
Whatever.
Yeah, whatever.
So the next thing you want to do is check to see if you have any third-party integration applications, QuickShift, DocStar. Do you want to upgrade those at the same time? If they're 2 years or older, you may want to consider it. That's our tip. Okay.
All right. So everything needs a plan, right? You don't want to just jump into it. So how do we put together our strategy for this?
Right. So do we have a testing strategy already? Some clients already do have good test plans. They made standard operating procedures when they were doing their implementation, and they'll use those for their quote to cash testing. But you want to consider 3 different types of testing. You want to test the functional areas. So you want to test the sales, the shipping, the engineering. You want to test those functional areas, but then you also want to do the integration testing. You want to test those items like DocStar and QuickShip and any add-on modules that you might be using as well. Then, of course, you want to do end-to-end overall testing to test those handoffs to make sure everything's working just fine.
Yeah, and then the second point here is don't just test the happy path. So the happy path is the expectation of everything runs perfect, everything goes through, you have perfect data, no anomalies, no weird stuff, right? Again, the point of testing is to be able to catch the weird stuff in the edge cases. So take some real life scenarios of where odd things happen in your business and turn those into test cases, because that's where you're going to find the problems. We see this all the time with customers is they test it and go, all right, I ran through our normal process. Everything worked fine. Well, what about when this happens? And what about when that happens? And what about when this thing breaks and, the data isn't updated right? Oh yeah, well, then we have to do this and that and the other thing. And well, those are the things you should test, because those are things that bite you in that whole testing process, and will bite you once it goes live, because then people are going to be, now what do I do? So
That's a great point. Yeah,
always think about the weird stuff that happens.
absolutely.
Yes, logging in is not I can log in is not a strategy. It is not you're not testing anything.
Yeah, logging in is not the weird stuff.
Yeah.
Go a little deeper. Great point. Then another excellent thing to do is user participation. Get your user involved in the testing. You can't have one person know how to do everything. So you want to get a cross blend of the users, but also you get the benefit of them learning the new application and learning the new Kinetic screens. It's a great way to get users involved. You don't need to get all your users involved in the testing, but maybe a couple people, or maybe somebody in the functional area that's very important, maybe somebody in the finance team, as well as somebody in the operations side. So keep that in mind, is make sure you have a good cross path of who's going to be your testers. Once you do that, you want to look at your standard operating procedures. Do they need revising? I mean, if you're going to the Kinetic and you're on classic screens, there's a whole group of new screen captures that you want to go and update your documentation. This would be a great time to get those updated, as while you're upgrading the system, you get those updated procedures. You may even find that you can revise some of them and get them more enhanced or more efficient. So keep that in mind. Take the advantage of doing the upgrade and making sure that you're reviewing also operating procedures. When you have a major release like 2024 to 2025, it's best to validate the master data as well as doing the quote to cash testing, because there may be schema in the database. I don't see that they have had major issues with the schema database in the last couple upgrades. I think they're doing a really good job of keeping everything seamless for the upgrades. So then once you do that, you want to make sure that you have your team ready to go live with this version. Some people consider what's called a conference pilot, and that's where each functional area gets in a conference room and demonstrates their job activities and make sure that they can perform the quote to cash process. They do a quote, they do a sales order, they submit it, they procure the parts, they go all the way through to shipping the software or shipping the item and then bringing in the money for that item. So think about maybe doing a conference pilot just to make sure everybody's doing well. You'll be able to identify any gaps that were missed if you do that and avoid a gotcha when you go live. So that's a great tip to think about doing a conference pilot if you can, plan to consider it. Now, when you're doing a SaaS upgrade, you may not have the bandwidth to do that. You might just say, everybody get in a test and make sure everything's working. So it depends on your scenario, whether you want to do the conference pilot or not. Mm-hmm. Centralized tracking of issues you have uncovered. That is a good thing to think about, because when you're doing this, it'll get you a test plan to be able to modify. So if you say, hey, we uncovered that this dashboard's not working, or this report needed to be modified, or this unique UD table or UD field was missing, and we needed to put that back in, you then can add that to your test plan. So it's really good to document anything you uncover and then make sure that you add it to your testing plan.
Yeah, and it's really important to do that, have it centralized so everybody can see it. And then, as Lisa said, make it part of your test plan, not just for this upgrade, but for future upgrades, right? So the stuff you find during your testing are ones that you need to really make sure go into your future test plans, because this isn't going to be the last time you do an upgrade, right? This isn't a one and done thing. You're going to want to do this over and over again as newer and newer versions come out. So, right, doing this, and having some discipline around what you're tracking, what issues you're finding, how you resolved them, right? What the actual fix was. Put that in there as well, because then that will feed into what you need to do in the future, upgrade somewhere down the road. And then
Wow.
I'll just hit the last point
Yeah,
here.
sure.
Again, always plan enough time to test everything, plan in enough time to resolve the issues, and then retest. Right? There's a lot of people spend a lot of time planning how to do the testing, and then kind of forget of, well, wait a minute, we need to go back and fix the things we found, because you will find things. Right? I don't think I've ever seen a upgrade or a test plan go through completely clean with no issues found. Right? So you've got to have time to resolve it and remediate those issues, and then test them again. And not just test what you fixed, because you also may have unintended consequences of, you may have fixed one thing, but that may have caused an impact somewhere else. So, just keep that in mind of, don't skimp on the amount of effort and time you're putting into it, just to make sure everything is good to go.
Well, and isn't this like anything else? The more you do, the better you get at it. So, the
Exactly.
more you continue, and, Epicor's done a pretty good job as of late to keep the the upgrades are less and less disruptive for the most part. And so if you're going to a fairly new version to the newest version, you should have less disruption than if you're going from some version of 10 or something.
Mm-hmm.
So let's talk about reports, guys, because this is a big part of it, right? This is a big part of this process.
I know many clients have reports. They use the canned reports, they use the custom reports. They have a lot of reports. Sometimes people have hundreds of reports. Well, how do I plan to get all of those reports converted over to the newer Kinetic release? You may want to consider, are they still being used? So talk with the owners, the business owners of those reports. Talk to the consumers of those reports. Are they needed? Can these reports be turned into dashboards? Consider changing it, or are they still needed? Because if they're not needed, there's no need to spend the time converting them. If they are, and they're critical to go live, then yes, you will need to spend some time converting it. And Alan was pointing out, you want to spend some time when you're testing to commit your time to convert these reports. So not only the testing, but also making sure that what you need for go live is ready once you are ready to move to production.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm. And then, do you have any documentation about the report creation? This is what this report does. These are the fields that we need in this report. Is there kind of a scope document for that? Because if you do need to recreate that report, this is the time to have that information, and it'll make your report creations easier. Now, let's say you don't have that. It's okay, because now would be a good time to put that together if you have to recreate that report. And like Mark was saying, it's not going to be your only time you're doing the upgrade. You'll have it for the next time you do it. So it's handy to have that functional design, but if you don't have it, it's a good time to create that report.
We find a lot of times too, especially when there's a whole bunch of reports, that a number of them just aren't needed anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And, so how do you know if you need it or not? Turn it off and see if anybody screams at you. That's usually the most effective way to do it. And if anybody's using this report or not, because a lot of times we see reports are one-offs that somebody created at some time, and maybe that person's not around anymore, or you've converted that stuff to a dashboard, which is another great way to get off of reports. Is turn those things into real-time dashboards if you can get away with it. So, okay, we've done all the stuff. Ready, set.
Let's pull the trigger, right? Let's get ready to do this upgrade. So if you're SaaS, remember that test environment is going to get put into your test area, and you're going to be ready to go. But if you're on-prem or cloud, you want to create a test environment. So look at your server, look at your space, make sure you have a test environment that you can put your copy of your live database into that test area so that you can begin to do that update. And you want to migrate that database over. And when you do that, time it. It's a tip, because then you'll know how long you'll need for your go live pass. If it takes only, an hour or 2 hours to migrate, depending on the size of your database, you're ready to go live. Maybe it takes less. So make sure that you time how long it takes to migrate that database over. That way you'll know what you'll need. You'll want to coordinate the upgrade integrations if you're going to upgrade them. So think about reaching out to those parties and saying, hey, we're ready to do our upgrade. We want to upgrade this at the same time. Maybe we've already planned for doing that at the same time you have the test plan for upgrading your quick ship. Then you want to execute those test plans and you want to confirm everything is working successfully. Document what you need to remediate and then fix those items and then validate. And a lot of times people just go through one test cycle. We recommend going through at least 2 test cycles because you'll find things the second time around. Or maybe you do one with a smaller group, a controlled group of testers, and then on your second cycle, you might open up to different users or different functional areas and have them test. And you might catch something else before going live. Once everybody's prepared, you're ready to execute that final go live pass. And don't forget to revalidate as needed. I find that sometimes when people do that last revalidation, they forget to print reports. So don't forget about printing client-facing documents. You want to test printing, okay?
All right. And then we're ready to go live.
Ready to go live. So the first thing you got to do is who determines go versus no go? And I recommend you get some stakeholders that are your key people and say, we're ready. Everybody gives the thumbs up. And then you execute the pre-go live validation, making sure that if you have any WIP, work in process that's in play, close out as much as you can. The less things that you have in play, the smoother the transition goes, the smoother the migration goes. So make sure that you close out as much as you can. I know a lot of times people say, we always have something going on, and that's great. So just keep that in mind. Keep as much closed out as possible. Then you want to perform your upgrade when all your users can be out of the system, typically over a weekend. I know it's best practice to start on a Friday and be able to migrate that database over and so that you're ready to do your final validation test midday Saturday. So the sooner you can start that Friday is better. I know sometimes you have to wait till the last shift is over or shipping has shipped or finance has finished their validations and closed out the WIP. So you have to time that of when can you start. You want to have all the users out, migrate the database over, uplift it to the latest release, and then make sure your migration of your customizations, your reports get moved into the new live environment. Then you want to execute your test plan, and you want to be all completed before your next production shift. So I know some people run very tight shifts on Saturdays and Sundays. So you want to make sure if you do have weekend shifts that you want to be wrapped up before they show up, or you're going to have to let them know that you're in the middle of an upgrade window, a maintenance window. Now, Alan was saying, make sure you plan time for testing. You also want to plan a little bit of extra time for any contingency or unexpected items that happen on that go live shift. You want to test the printers and you want to make sure everything is working. So make sure that you can have a little bit of leniency for when people get back into Epicor again. And then what happens if it's not going well? You get in there, you're testing on that Saturday, and you're finding something, and that you're looking at it going, we didn't plan for that. It wasn't in our test plan. We missed it. We can't go live with it this way. You want to have a rollback plan. Typically, what you can do is just go back to the previous version that you were on that Friday afternoon and just keep using that version. And then try it again next weekend or whenever your next maintenance window is. But make sure that you do have some sort of, hey, if it's not working by noon on Sunday, we're calling it. So don't continue to keep pushing it until 6 a.m. on Monday morning.
Yeah, I'll just chime in on that a little bit. Yeah, have a plan ahead of time, right? So prepare for the worst case scenario if something goes wrong, and you know who to communicate to, who's going to make the decision, what are the activities that need to happen to do that. So think about that ahead of time, because the last thing you want to do is be scrambling in that moment of panic, right? Of things aren't going well. What do we do now? And you don't want to have to figure it out at that point. You want to be able to have it documented. Hey, here's what we're going to do. Here's the decision makers we got to get involved. Here's who we're going to communicate to, and here's all the exact steps that we're going to follow. Again, worst case scenario, but be prepared.
And then execute your post-go live validation. And part of that is just making sure that the end users have their links to the new location. If you're going to start using the browser, maybe you weren't using the browser before and you're going to use the browser, make sure that they have the links to the new browser URL. If you're going to update the client, make sure you can update that as well. Pointing to the new production version of the Epicor.
And then use it, right? let's when you upgrade and you go live, you're on the new stuff, and you've got new features and capabilities. Understand that, read those release notes, understand what value it's going to bring to you. Make sure all your users understand and can access it well, and get the benefit of it. I don't know, guys, you got anything else you want to add to this?
No, it's going to be easier the next time you go through it because you've already been through it a couple of times then, right? You got a good test plan. So
that's right. You just take the test plan out and do it again when the next release comes out.
Yep.
It's less
Tune
scary.
it up a little
right?
bit and make it easy.
Yep. Sue, I think we're ready for questions.
Hey, we've got a decent amount here. We are on 2024.1 and upgraded in November of 2024. Our current version is 11.3.100.13. Where can we get the latest .13 above?
Yes,
Go ahead, Lisa.
there's a download area inside of Epicor, and whoever that is, we can provide that link of where that is to go download that version.
Somebody did throw a link in here, epicweb.epicor.com. Does that sound right, Lisa? Kind of
that's
yeah,
correct.
perfect. Okay. All right.
Yeah,
We're
and if,
currently
for some reason you're having a tough time finding it or whatever, just drop an email to help@tudortech.com or helpdesk@tudortech.com. That will and then we can point you in the right direction.
Mhm.
We are currently on Epicor 10.1 on premise. Is there an option for upgrading to the latest version and still keeping on premise?
Absolutely. You can still do it. You should not be on 10.1. That's an old version, and some of the earlier versions of 10 were kind of painful. But you can absolutely upgrade as long as you have the room in your server, or if you want to move it to a cloud-based instance, we can help you with that too. But yeah, absolutely, there's a path to go from that.
Next question. This may be a stupid question. Is there a way to identify within our database what all the customizations and customized reports are?
No stupid questions, just stupid answers. So we'll do the best we can to not get one of those. Lisa, what's the best way for them to do that?
Yeah, if you're 22.1 or higher, there's a dashboard you can run inside of Epicor that will produce it for you. If not, then there's a tool that's called the Analyzer tool, and it can be run against your database to pull that out. And if you need help, let us know. I think also Epicor can help you with that as well if you submit a case ticket.
Yeah, there's quite a few methods to identify where your customizations are sitting.
Mhm.
Okay. Next question. The new Epicor upgrade 2025.1 is moving to Linux containers for storage. Will there be any changes that will need to be made at the user level, similar to what we had to do with the upgrade to version 2024 with the Edge tool?
Yeah, so let me grab that. So we've been we've been testing and training on 2025.1 for the last couple of months. There are some relatively significant changes. I'm not sure when the embargo is over on this, but we are under NDA to not talk about it. So I'm going to do that, not talk about it. But there are some significant changes with 2025.1, and as soon as that embargo is up, we'll be more than happy to share that information. In fact, this is probably a good time for us to plug that we are going to be at Insights. We are in booth 19, and we'll be willing and ready to have those discussions at that time.
All right, next question. Should we test each version of the update? For example, most of the speed bumps take place within the first upgrade. For example, 2024.1.4 is more difficult than the update to 2024.1.12.
Some people do that. My feeling is just go to .12 right away and test that. The one time that you want to do the jump, if you're coming from an old version like Vista or E9, and you might want to do a jump to more of a medium one and then to the higher one. But for the most part, just go right to the latest version.
You provide test plans, or is this available on Epic Web?
Test plans are on Epic Web. Yes.
Yeah, Epicor does a pretty good job of providing some
Mhm.
sample test plans.
Yeah, and
they're out there.
yeah, they list the functional areas within Epicor, and then they say like test adding a sales order, test doing this, so they give you the little scenarios that you can print it off.
Okay, just a couple more. How long does the upgrade process take?
Great question.
Depends.
Yeah. Right. So some people can get through it within a few weeks, 4 to 6 weeks. Some depending on how big their database is and how much unique business components they have to move over, customizations and reports. So with the SaaS, you're getting 30 days, right? But for the on-prem people, you do have a little bit of luxury of being able to do 2 cycles, maybe 3 if you want, do a confident pilot. So some people will take, 2, 3, 4 months to get fully vetted. My feeling is the longer you take to do your upgrade, people forget about doing the upgrade. So you want to get that testing cycle down to, a month or 2. You don't want to go 4 or 5 or 6 months because guess what? The next update's coming out. So you want to have a time period. And that's why that test plan comes into play, because you can get that testing down to a science.
We're in version 10. We're looking to make the jump to Kinetic. We have a bunch of custom reports, VAQs. What's the best way to tackle that?
That's a great question. So, identify what those reports and VAQs and dashboards are. So you get your list. And then first thing I would do is prioritize it. Because if you have 5 or 10, you're going to get them all upgraded. If you have hundreds, 100, 300, whatever it might be, you want to prioritize which ones are the ones that are the daily reports or the daily things that we're going to need, critical go lives, which are the weekly reports. Maybe you have monthly reports or year-end reports. If you have a year-end report and it's not year-end, you don't have to get to that right away. You can make that a lower priority and then get to it eventually. So you want to make sure that you prioritize them. And then I would work with each business unit or the consumer of that report or that data and just make sure, is this still needed? And when you go from E10 or something like that to Kinetic, if you do it by functional group, that seems to work out really well. So sales, what are the customizations that you're using? Show me how you do your job. Oh, I see you have these user definable fields. I see you running these reports and you need this dashboard. And then upgrade that. That user then can go right to the Kinetic screens if that's the case, So you may want to do it functional group by functional group, or you may want to just tackle the whole thing in a priority order, depending on what works best for your organization.
Yeah, and let me just add a little bit onto that too, is it's a good time to take a look at any of those customizations or reports that you have and really take a hard look at what is in the current version and can those go away, right? Because Epicor's adding new capability, new things all the time. And in many cases, what we find is a customization that would have been done in a much previous version is no longer needed because the functionality is there. Now, you also got to look at, is it exactly the way you're doing it, or is there a slight variation? So kind of look at your processes, look at those things to say, can we eliminate that customization and go with core base functionality that's in Epicor?
Yeah, because the more you
Right.
eliminate, the faster your upgrade's going to be the next time, right?
Yes, yeah.
Mhm.
Again, everybody should always strive to being on standard software without customizations, without that uniqueness. Doesn't matter if it's Epicor or any software.
Next question. We'll be upgrading from 10.2.7 to Kinetic later this year, but we're planning a slower transition off the classic screens. Can you speak more to the classic screen sunsetting? I'm assuming they'll still be available but unsupported. Curious to know how urgent a transition to Kinetic screens should be. So I will say, Byron, for these guys weigh in. So we just had a webinar on this a couple weeks ago. Sam and Zach on our team went through and talked about the important dates and things you need to know. So that is posted on our YouTube channel. I encourage you to hop on there and watch it. It's really, really good content. Sam will actually be back at the end of the month with a follow-up to that one as well. So also you might want to look out for that because these guys are really digging in and getting all of you guys prepared for what you need to know on that particular topic. I don't know if you guys want to add something in particular to that.
No, I mean, I think that's the best thing to do is take a look at those previous webinars. This can go down a rabbit hole very quickly because there's a lot of stuff around this, which is why we did a whole webinar on it and a follow-up. So
Yeah, but I will say the long answer short is you really should not put off going to the new UI because there's a learning curve there, and there's different functionality you have to learn, and the longer you wait, the more rushed your team's going to be to try to learn stuff. So you really should start that transition when you're transitioning to Kinetic for sure.
Well, and nearly all the new functionalities in the Kinetic screens. So the development and some of the stuff that's been introduced is available only in the Kinetic screens. Even if if you plan to stay on the classic screens, you're not going to be able to take advantage of a lot of the new features.
That's right.
Yep. Okay. I think this is the last question, unless something else comes in last minute. Is there a good resource for training to learn the best practice for performing upgrades and creating new environments?
You mean besides watching this webinar over and over again?
Right.
There's great videos, learning videos out on the Epicor or the Epic Learning Center and the Epic Web. They have really great what's included in this release and then how to perform upgrades. There's a lot of good videos out there. And then also you can also work with a partner if you really would like that.
So thank you everybody for
Hey,
attending
come
today.
come see us in Vegas. Come find us at Insights.
And come see us at Insights for sure. Everyone have a great day. Thank you so much.
Thanks,
guys.
everybody.
Thank you.